so excited to actually like chat. I know Nicole, you and I have talked, but Kate, like we never I guess this is as real life as we're going to get, like have had a conversation.
Have we never
No.
chatted?
There's a
No.
lot of those
Yeah.
people in the group that like I've never met in person, but like know online. Yeah.
Okay, the internet is very weird because in my mind, we chat all the time. Like,
Right. Like we're
I
good
know
people.
you.
I know. It's weird how the internet will do that for people, you know?
Oh, well, it's nice to meet you,
Yeah,
Emily.
you too.
Today on the podcast, we have Emily Tseffos, who is the chair for the, okay, now I have to ask again, Outagamie?
Outagamie.
Out of
Yeah.
game.
Outagamie
Yeah.
Dems.
Yes.
Kind of an area in the Fox Valley in Wisconsin with a lot of rural areas.
Mhm.
Just ran for state assembly, and unfortunately, it did not turn out the way we were hoping. But I think you have had maybe some of the most and best learnings out of anybody I've seen anywhere. The mom activist has been a lifetime organizer. Would that be fair to say?
Yeah, I mean, it was a 2016 thing for me, so it
Okay.
seems like a lifetime.
Seems
I've
like a
aged a
lifetime.
lifetime.
How are you?
I'm okay. We're okay. Like, and it's, I feel like I hit a brick wall.
Mhm.
You're going 100 miles an hour for a campaign and then all of a sudden it's just over. So I lost my footing for a minute and I was like, I'm going to sit on the couch and I'm going to, maybe drink some wine and maybe just read a book and tune it out. But it's been, like we're finding our footing. It's nice having the kids around. I've got 3 kids. And so they keep things, there's a little bit of levity just with your kiddos running around all the time. So that's helpful.
Yeah,
But yeah,
they really bring things back to real life real quick,
The
huh?
they really
machine
do.
has to
Yeah.
keep going when there are kids involved. So thank you so much, Emily, for joining. Wish that I mean, we're close enough together, like location wise, where I feel like I should see you more often. But just wanted to start out by saying that out of everything through the election, and I know I've said this to you privately, but your campaign was just such a joy to watch and be a part of, and so distinctly different than what many other candidates were doing. And it was so genuine and true. And we have a lot of things to chat about today, but I guess I just wanted to kick off with what was your like? You're getting out in the community, speaking to people, but then also meeting people where they are. You're so effective at that. Could you talk a little bit about? I mean, having a new district and having to connect with people who you wouldn't normally probably bump into. I think that's just part of the quality of who you are and part of what you do with the Outagamie Dems. Could you talk a little bit about that and how you build community?
Yeah, thank you. I tried to be different, so I'm glad that people saw that. I think for me, a lot of like the work that I did and when I was connecting with people on doors and whatnot was to acknowledge just like how messy life is. And that like we are being told like on either side, frankly, that like the other side is evil. I mean, we're literally using those words about each other, but really there's a lot of people that like simply they want to take care of their family or their community or whatever it is, and they might not understand all the nuances, or they might be holding that as the priority, like what they think will help that as the priority over everything else, and doing harm to people that maybe are not as close to them. And so I try to like approach it with like respect for just the messiness of life, like I said, but also like conduct myself in a way that was not so like boxed politically, because I think that we need to humanize the party and we need to humanize the policies and like allow them the space to connect what I care about to like a real experience that kind of shaped the way that I thought about things, and in the hopes that that would, give them permission in a sense to say, oh, I never thought about it that way. Like, oh, like, and we're planting seeds. Like, this was a 30 plus Republican district. Like, I knew I wasn't going to win. But I think if we can begin to build that kind of conversation and those kind of relationships, it's only going to help us down the road. Because, after the election, I had people that were Republicans and independents and libertarians reach out to be like, I split a ticket for you, Emily, and I want to build on that. And that's what we should be aiming to do as Democrats. It's like, great, you only went for me and then it was Republicans up, not ideal, right? But we're making inroads, because if we don't start doing that, we're only going to further divide our communities. And also like we're not giving people the benefit of the doubt that if you have a rational, respectful conversation, like, oh, like I would like to see that. And it gives, I just think it's so important that we do that instead of just being like, I'm here for this ticket. If you don't agree, then you know, I'll shut the door in your face or you shut the door in mine. We're not going to have a conversation. Like, it doesn't serve anybody.
Yeah, I think that is the most important thing and the work moving forward. Now, I'm in a hotel because I attended the Obama Foundation Democracy Forum yesterday, where we talked about pluralism and this whole concept of needing to meet people where they are, and needing to find common ground, and needing to have uncomfortable conversations, because that's the only way we're going to move forward. And I think you are so unique because you understand modern motherhood in America and just what it means to be like a millennial girl and all the things that we all like talk about and care about. And also, you deeply understand rural America. What do you think a lot of our audience, and probably just people in general, are getting wrong or misunderstanding about rural America?
Ooh. I think that like one of the things I always tell people, I mean, with any community, it's not a monolith, right? Like there are people that you don't ignore it, and don't be afraid of it, because you'll walk up to people that are good-natured people that show up for their communities, like via Lions clubs and church groups and all this other stuff. They're good people. They just are never talked to by us, and when we do, it is very much that you are the villain in this story kind of thing. And that's the vibe that they like will share, where they're like, well, do you think that I'm really a bad person? And I'm like, no, I don't think you're a bad person. I think we are gonna agree and disagree, but what I want to do is like have a conversation where we can bring our experiences and learn a little bit of something from each other, and then go forth. But I think like the writing off of any group of humans is a disservice to all of us, because we could afford to, learn a little something and consider a perspective, and work to like refine things. It can't be all or nothing. We have to like, I would always like sand down the edges.
Yes, I think all of that is just like hits the nail on the head. And I think we've all gotten, I guess just speaking for myself, I've definitely gotten wrapped up in like thinking that everybody who supports Trump represents Trump. And that's I think that's a mistake. I think there's a lot of reasons and context and nuance to why people support conservative candidates. They may not even actually really support Trump. They still voted that way. And I think what I've been learning a lot more about is like we really need to understand their fears and where they're coming from and peel that stuff back, as opposed to like just writing them off immediately. And I feel like Democrats in general that is something we need to work on. That's like we tend to lump everybody in and like not even give them a chance and just write them off.
That's the same thing that they do, like, like the right does the same thing, where they're like, they're all this way. So you show up on a door that's never had a Democrat. Like, what do you mean you're out here as a Democrat? But like, to what I like think is a part of this is also like the local, right? Like we are because of money and politics, there are things that are just they're twisted along the way, but at the end of the day, we all want to take care of, like, we want to have money in our pocket at the end of the month. We want to take care of our families and take care of our community. And so if you start with that at a local level, which is, I think, the sweet spot for like county parties, for local candidates to be like, hi, I live down the road and I'm just here to talk about, whatever moves you right outside your front door. And to get, like, I've had people that are, lamenting the state, like Freedom is a school district that my son attends, and they just went to operational referendum. And in part, it was like this building that's 50 years old that had a leaky roof. So like to tell that story, and for those parents or those people to recognize, like, yeah, Freedom's like really struggling, and to say to them, connecting it to policy, well, we've been underfunding them at the state level for over a decade. And so there's over 100 districts that have gone to referendum just this, cycle. And then to I always say, like, get them in at the ground level and then move them up. So if you say to that person, you just told me you care about your public schools, Trump wants to defund the Department of Ed, and here's how that's going to impact our public schools. Like, and because it like you have to do it at a local level. I think that's just so critical.
Yeah, I think too, a lot of people might not know about your background, but I think you have a real unique way of connecting that is really effective here because of the work you did previously in Tennessee. So you were working in a state that maybe was, had more liberal pockets, but you were already used to having probably more difficult conversations with people who aren't inherently going to agree with everything you're saying. Could you talk a little bit about what your background brings to the work you do here in Wisconsin?
Yeah. Well, I think so. I was activated in like 2016 with the first child. My baby was 15 months old, so that was where I was like, oh God, what are we doing here? But in Tennessee, we focused on a particular lawmaker that was credibly accused and had apologized to women that he sexually abused while he was a high school basketball coach. So like near and dear to my heart as a fellow survivor. But it was rural, like real rural Tennessee. And so not only are you like, this guy is somebody that's respected in the community, very well known, very entrenched. And we try to do the typical electoral stuff where we're like, we'll just knock doors. And if we tell them, then it'll be fine. And they reelected him by a larger margin. And so that like shocked us and was like, wait a minute. But it reaffirmed the importance of trust and the fact that sometimes you're working like against, generations of trauma that these communities that are in, they're baked in, and we don't think we could do anything about them. And so we kind of reconfigured and we're like, okay, like what does it mean to actually move the needle here and focus on smaller successes down the way so that women first aren't being harmed, and if they are, they have the courage to step up. And we went about that in a different way where we were employing and connecting with like local church leaders and community leaders to be like, let's have just conversations. They're not political. It's just about sexual violence, right? And just about how we can support these people. And that, like, again, it's making sure that you're showing up in those spaces, but not always being like, let me shove a platform down your throat or a candidate. Like, I just want to be here for you. Like, we just got to fix this.
Yeah, that is the thing. And I think we need to like continue to start having conversations that aren't rooted in politics. Of course, we do say like everything is political, and it is, but first you have to like connect with the people first before they're, I think, willing to like get into those next conversations. Because just like you said, there's generational trauma, there's generational beliefs. It's a lot to crack that down. It's all progress, but also some nuts are harder to crack than others, and it takes a while. And I think it takes different strategies too, and different ways of talking to people.
Yeah, definitely.
And approach.
Definitely.
It's all of the above. And I think what we've been talking a lot with Motherhood for Good is finding your community, which is such, it's kind of like self-care. Like you say those phrases and you kind of can eye roll. Like, what does that mean? Truly, it just means, are you going to story time at the library? Are you saying hi to people while you're there? Are you noticing the same moms when you are at the library or at daycare pickup or whatever? For me, I have a college student. How do I make sure that I'm involved in the work they're doing, and who are the people they're working with, the groups they're interacting with? Can I get connected to those as well? It just takes a little bit of effort. I think I am one of those homebody people. Like at my core, I have I'm out in the world for work. So when I'm home, I just want to shut down. But that's not helping anything. So it doesn't always have to be this loud political fight. It can just be that local connection is so vital before anything else can happen.
Mm-hmm. And building off of that, since you are in a rural area and you did knock on so many doors and talk to so many people, do you think the problem is more hate or loneliness?
I think it's loneliness. I think it's loneliness and like disinformation. Like that's disinformation. We can't ignore that plays a giant role into people, because we're all like on our phones and on our computers, and then you're lonely. We're not connecting as a community, and no one's countering that because you're able to operate in a silo per whatever algorithm you've found yourself falling down, and that's it. And if you have no connection to your community, like you eat that up, and that again, it bakes in, and it's really hard to combat it unless you're actually able and willing to connect with people around you to be like, wait a minute, is that true? Maybe not.
Change is hard too. Like I feel like when you are used to something, you're comfortable with it, and when something else comes in, I mean, that's just inherent to being human, where it's like, whoa, like if that's true, then I have to change all this other stuff. Like that doesn't happen quickly. That doesn't happen over the course of a month. That is slow, progressive work. Change is hard.
Mm-hmm. That's like one of the things, like in the summer of 2020, after George Floyd was murdered, like I was an organizer with Indivisible, and we did a whole thing on like the history of policing. And I invited my dad, who's 60, to like be a part of it. Cause I was like, hey, I'd like your perspective on like what we put together and all this stuff. And we talked through like the lived experience of people of color, and all of this. And we got through this hour training. I talked to my dad and I was like, what'd you think? And he's like, Emily, he's like, I get it. And he's like, but I'm also now kind of like, whoa, because you're asking me to reconsider the way I experienced the world for 60 years. And I think about that all the time, where like you're at a door and they are legitimately fearful that like an undocumented immigrant will be squatting in their home when they come home from work one day. And like, it is such a delicate and nuanced conversation to like plant a little seed here and there to be like, can you tell me, like, and not to be like, that sounds insane, but to say like, hey, can you tell me where you heard that? Like that would be really frightening. Can you explain to me where you heard that from? Because I haven't heard that at all. Like, and really like kind of be like, yeah, well, let's talk through it. Let's like dispel this kind of stuff and then offer them a counter after that. But to say, well, no, that's not happening. Like that just comes off to them as like, well, then do you think I'm stupid? Like, and you cannot like do that because you're not gonna be able to make any sort of inroad anywhere.
Yeah.
Yeah, how do we take each other's fears seriously?
Yeah.
And
'Cause
have
it
we
is.
been, if we're really honest with ourselves, have we been taking each other's fears seriously? And I bet the answer for a lot of people listening is maybe not.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. And it is
Ooh,
a
that's a
stretch.
big question, right? And
Yeah.
being able to like, because there's so much like identity politics and polarization, and like we can't assume that because somebody, is reiterating these points from the right and Fox News, like that they're just doing that because they hate everyone. Like we cannot assume that. We have to assume that's coming from a real place of fear and how they grew up and these things they've known for 60 years. And we have, like, we owe it not to them, but to ourselves to take them seriously and have that conversation, because that's the only way we're going to change. And I think flipping it, like, as we're not doing them a favor by doing that. I mean, we are, because it's listening is a kind thing to do. But ultimately, that's in our benefit to figure out why these people are afraid in the first place and try to dispel a lot of that disinformation that they've certainly been fed, right? So what do you think? I know I've loved watching your threads and all your thoughts and everything. If you guys don't follow, okay, quick plug for you. Which platform are you on these days? I don't know which one to tell people. Are you on
I'm
them all?
trying to be everywhere. I'm on TikTok and Instagram and Facebook and Threads and X, sort of.
Okay. Yes,
Just
all the
I'm
places. Some of
working
the
there.
threads I think
Yeah.
in particular I've been loving. And, here in Wisconsin, lots of people are watching what's going to happen because our state chair, Ben Wickler, has put his hat in the ring for national DNC chair.
Yeah.
So, what do you think is the most important thing for that person to be? Not to do, but to be.
Like at the DNC level,
Yeah.
I'd say like connected, and in a way that is like actually connected to the communities that we're trying to serve and make inroads with. Like Ben has been incredibly successful. Like I think our ground game in the state of Wisconsin is unmatched. And I think that he'd do a great job of extending his fundraising prowess and that kind of prioritization to the DNC. So yeah, we'll see what happens down the road. It's exciting.
So, assuming it goes that route, following that string, who do you think would be a good Wisconsin chair?
I would say that like I think that having someone from like the grassroots that understands how the machine works and how it could work better would be incredibly important and impactful. So that's what I'd hope to see.
I think a lot of people, rightfully so, are frustrated with the national campaign, like pushing door knocking, door knocking, door knocking. When we saw that the Republicans, and again, I'm not talking about local races, I'm talking about the presidential race. When we saw that Republicans did not have a ground game, and it was odd. I was like, I don't think they're going to win. I haven't seen it, I haven't seen it at all. And it turned out they didn't need it. So I think a lot of people are like are kind of trying to write it off, but what I want to get to is like I think we need to just reevaluate its place in the overall machine, and I think we need to make more space for other like relational organizing. There's so like the stuff that we create online and that people share out like and have conversations that can reach a lot more people sometimes quicker than door knocking. However, in rural areas, that door knocking is unmatched, right? Like there's nothing like going to those homes and talking to people.
That's what I like was one of my like ugh, kind of things is that like because it all comes from the like the coordinated campaign, so it's a national kind of direction that you have to go to because everyone's a part of it and paying into it and whatever. But I think like to prioritize the doors that we've never talked to understand like the value and the worth of those conversations particularly is so important. And then to make sure that we are not just like you said, and is the key word here is that we're doing the electoral like traditional methods door knocking, but like we were way behind on social media. And kudos to you guys for like seeing that and being like, hey, Dems, where are we at? and getting that content out. But they're like the pipelines that exist, that they are just like, where, because it is like, Kate, we mentioned this at the beginning, like, I haven't met you in person, but I feel like I know you, right? Like, and
Yeah.
that's what they're doing on the right, where they're like content. And then at the end being like, by the way, this is my guy. And they're like, oh, well, I trust that person because we've been having this relationship for a year. And so I'm going to do what she just told me to do, like, and that's something where I'm like, oh man, we need to be paying more attention. And it was super interesting being like a down ballot candidate because I put, thousands of dollars into my digital game. And people like knew me when I went to their door, and like that conversation was already started, and they felt like they could, converse with me in a way that maybe they wouldn't have if I had just cold called them on a doorstep. But because they're like, oh, I saw your videos, like then we were able to pick up at a place further down the road. So I think we need to do more of that.
I think too, it's the idea of trusting more than one person to hold the message. I feel like you couldn't have a differing opinion. You couldn't,
I like that.
And I know, Kate, you and I behind the scenes, I'd be like, oh, I don't agree with that. Or why are we letting just this one like, you have to be able to have some questioning. You have to have different voices. Like, just trust that the message is out there, and it's better when you have more voices. I feel like it got so siloed, and like everybody was like, we can't mess up, so stay in line. And it's like, the whole machine goes off the rails a little if you can't. The whole magic of this is different voices and trusting that those side conversations are just as important. Because like you said, Emily, that is, hey, that's my guy. I trust him. I'm going to vote for who he says. If you have your people that you already know and like and are invested in, you don't need to have always the singular Wisdems message. Like, just trust that the greater conversation is forwarding the issue, or forwarding the, getting us across the finish line in the right way. That part really, like, I'll be honest, like, that is, for me, it's so important that we can have small disagreements in the greater conversation, knowing that, hey, we're all going towards the same place. But
right. We're still rowing together. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, 100%. And I think like too, like think about the way that the machine works now, where it's like, it's these top surrogates and things like that. Like, is that more impactful to see another face that you've seen on commercials, or to have somebody that's standing on a street that's down the road from you or in the town next door that is like, I'm right here and here's what we're talking about and here's how we're connecting it,
Yeah, and I'm sure obviously the campaigns do a ton of message testing, and there's reasons behind the key policy issues they talk about, and like reiterating them over and over and over again. And I think, like, to an extent that is important from like the established campaign and party, because they have to like make sure people know that information. But having these other messengers and these other people in the ecosystem that stray from that, or find other unique ways to talk about it, or weave it into more of their like lifestyle content or other things, I think is really important. Not only that the Democratic establishment can trust those people, but also kind of, gets them the right information on the background, and like says, all right, I guess like do with this what you want, how you want to do it. And I think because that's what people really connect with. I feel like a lot of the messaging that comes out from Democrats is like made for a quick brochure or a 30-second TV spot. It's like kind of just quick like that, and they want to get the message across. But we live in a world that like where people are watching 5-minute TikToks of digging into something. People crave context. And I think it's harder these days to just say something without giving it more context. And I think that's why like having a full ecosystem of other people out there talking about this is going to be really helpful to break through.
Yeah, like different levels of it, where you have the people that are like getting into the nuances and the detail on policy, but like other people that are like one liner clickbait, like you have to do it all. And there are people that are, there. So I think like to your point about the messaging that is tested, like to be like, okay, we've got our own pipeline, right? Like where it's like, take this and do with it what you will in the way that you do it, because you've got your audience. But here are the tested things that we found to be effective. Like if you can touch on that, great. But like allowing, again, trust is huge.
It's huge. So. I think too, along the way, you're then kind of swooping in and you're building relationship with independent voters the whole time along the way as well. You don't need to have the big D Democratic thing on attached to it. It can just be like, hey, this is a content creator, or hey, I like this person's page. Yeah, they obviously lean more liberal than me, or hey, they're whatever. Like, but still, hey, I like the content they have. I like the stuff they share. I have a lot of people I follow where it's like, I don't agree with everything they do, but I really like when they talk about whatever. I just feel like that's so important, and it goes back to that idea of not needing to agree on everything, and just finding ways to connect. People vote because of issues. At the end of the day, it's going to be whatever issue is like the thing that they're most passionate about, or what they're most important, what is most important to them. And sometimes I think that gets lost as we get closer to an election and the ball is quickly rolling down the hill. So.
But I also think, and I can't claim this, I was talking to my friend Caitlin, who runs Moms for Iowa, another great person who really understands like rural communities. She's like, I think we put so much onus on issues, but we need to get back to the values. And it really is different. People are sick of like hearing about just like, you know, like abortion or like the more identity politics stuff, because if you peel that back and you're like, is it an important value that people have freedom in their medical decisions and bodily autonomy? Most of them are going to say yes. And that feeds into both the abortion issue and, you know, the LGBTQ issue, especially for trans people trying to access medical care. So I think leading more with the values and then kind of getting more into the issues and tying it to a candidate. And that's more work, right? You got to like have the longer conversation and probably follow up and draw that line. But I think that's what we got to do.
Yeah. That's what I did on like all my mailers, where I was like, and again, it's like reminding people that you know, the people that are thinking like, you think I'm bad because I'm a Republican or whatever, but to say like, we share the same Wisconsin values. I want to get back to that. Like, I want to get back to being able to have that conversation, and I want to get back to legislating in that way, right? If we share these values, we might differ on a couple of different policy things, but if we're saying that we care about X or Y or Z thing, we're going to be moving in the same direction, right? And we have to be able to have that kind of conversation. I think like part of it, like here in Wisconsin specifically, because of the new maps and the way that the legislature is shifting, is like you want somebody that's going to be at the table, and frankly like you want, you know, like the accountability piece is also like a huge thing, and if you can draw on that too, to be like, I want to be a conduit from your voice to Madison. That's how this is supposed to work. And so I think like there's that whole like politics is broken and too far away, but to go and be like these people, again, local level, to be like, I want this to be a relationship that's back and forth and collaborative, because that's how democracy is supposed to work. That is something that hit pretty well too.
Off of that, I'm just curious, I'm just going to segue over to this. What would you say to moms who are listening, who are thinking maybe like, there's an open candidacy in my school board, or, you know, there's a local alderman or alderperson. What was that experience like? Can you talk a little bit about like deciding to run for office locally? And we're always saying like, hey, get involved, go start showing up to those school board meetings, do that. But I haven't run for office. Kate hasn't run for office. Can you talk a little bit about like your decision to just go for it and do it? And I guess this is our pitch to like tell moms to go for it.
Yeah.
Was it worth it?
Well,
It was worth it.
Yeah.
It like filled, I mean, honestly, it filled my cup in a way that like I did not expect in 2024 in politics to fill it. And it was really, really cool, because the way that like I did it, and the way you can do it if you want to run and you've got kiddos, is to center it in the values that you're trying to teach your kids, you know, like, and have them be a part of it. Like my kids went canvassing with me, and they would sit, you know, like when I would occasionally phone bank, you know, we'd all be on the couch together and stuff like that. They helped me put stamps on my postcards. And it's really, you know, like about having those kind of conversations. And the whole time that we did, it was, if you see something wrong in the world and you feel like something needs to change, like you can be that change maker, you know, like, and that was a really, really cool thing. So I would encourage anybody that's considering it, like, obviously it can get, you know, things get nasty but that's at a federal level. Like if you care about your community, you're not going to get the same pushback and disrespect that you get from being too far removed because you're a neighbor. And so I think that that's a really important note, because that's something I was fearful of before I decided to run. I was like, what does this look like as a mom? You know, like, are my kids going to be a part of this? But it turned out to be a lot better, because we were always, you know, I was like, we're rooting this in love and a mutual respect for our neighbors and things like that. And that was just it was such a cool thing. And like my daughter she's like, we were cleaning out all of my campaign stuff, and she's like, can I have one of your stickers? I was like, what are you going to do with that? And she's like, I want to put it in my memory box because I just was so proud of you. And I was like, oh, Aurora.
Oh my God. Okay, so yeah, worth it. Yeah, that's like the holy grail, right?
Exactly. Yeah. Yeah. And I just think about like, you know, I don't know about you guys, but I think about this a lot when, you know, like when history books are written. I remember that my one of my assignments was to talk to like, I think my grandma or something about like the 60s. What did you do? You know, like what were you active in? And like, how cool is it to tell that story that in 2024, I did the most patriotic thing that I thought I could do in that moment. And you were a part of it. Like, it's so cool. And I think like when you teach them that way and you incorporate, you know, the values you're trying to teach your kids, it's just like you're living out exactly who you want them to be. And it was really like just a very cool thing for us.
Oh
So
my
do
gosh.
it.
Well, and if somebody's not ready to run for office yet, this is the last thing I kind of want to ask about.
Yeah.
We always tell people like we'll have more stuff coming up and action items, but we coming back to that community and how important it is to connect with people in real life. One of the easiest things that I say that people can do is join their county Dems or go to a meeting. Now I know you're probably one of like the youngest county Democratic chairs. Um, can you tell, like, people have no idea what to expect when they go to those. So if somebody has never gone before, can you just like walk them through like what it might be like and why they should give it a shot?
Yeah. This is a good question. I will say it varies across the state, because it's different party leadership and everything. But pretty much we've got monthly meetings, but at all of these different counties. We follow Robert. I feel like it's important to mention that you follow Robert's rules because, like, as a millennial, I'm like, no, thank you, but it's part of the.
I know. We really got to push against that. I know.
I know. I'm working on it. It's a slow
Me
process.
too.
But like so that exists. But I think that we Nicole's.
I'm the Gen X
But like,
of this crowd, so like I serve on multiple boards. I just have to laugh. The Roberts Rules just keeps an equal playing field, but I hear you. It's brutal. It's brutal.
it is brutal. I know. Anyway, so expect that. But we also are working, like in the spring, we're working on talking to our local people about like running for school board and town boards and county boards and things like that. We're going to be working on that really important Supreme Court race. And so for us, like 2025 is going to look, like the typical electoral stuff in the months leading up to April, but also like we do social events. We offer childcare at our meetings because I know how important that is on a weeknight when you're trying to do what you need to do to fill your own cup, maybe.
Yeah.
But it is all different. Like we have a, communications team. We have people like we're strategizing at those meetings. We're, discussing the latest cabinet appointment or whatever, if people want to do that a little bit. But we're trying to figure out how to make change locally. And again, like I think that if you are looking to get involved, or maybe you've never been involved, or maybe maybe your county party's not that active, like you have so much power, and you can step into that power in big and small ways to build that community. If it doesn't exist already, like there's no one better than you to build it because you see a need. So I would just like recommend either stepping into that to ask how you can help, or any like local organizations, or, like we have, because I operated in rural Outagamie, we also have some groups that are pretty far away from our county party office. So they are starting their own little like neighborhood team. And part of that is just being like, right now they're reaching out to a church group that offers help to Haitian newcomers in that area. And they're working on how to best support them and how to tell their neighbors about them, because we know that the immigrant community is being demonized, and it may be feeling like their existence here is threatened in the coming months, and so we're talking about like, how do you show up, like how do you become a trusted vehicle that connects our neighbors, that shows up in moments of crises, and then down the line, like what does it look like to continue to build that way. So we're working on that.
So if you want to show up to one of these meetings, you might get a little bit of everything, but
Yes.
you'll never know unless you try.
Sure.
You'll
right?
never know.
Yeah, you'll probably get a slice of pizza and like some soda out of a 2-liter bottle and some
We have
conversation.
cookies.
Like
People love doing snacks.
yes, exactly.
Yeah, it's great. Yeah, but you can always reach out to me too if you are like wondering like how to get involved or what your local county party looks like. We're pretty connected, so just find me on all the socials.
Yes, find Emily Tseffos. Her name does not pronounce the T in Tseffos, but there is a T in it. If you're Googling her, we'll put her information up, and she is a real one. We've like loved being connected to you and following along from the beginning. Cannot wait to see what you do next.
Yes.
You are just such a breath of fresh air and wonderful voice in Wisconsin change. And
You guys, thank you so much. I've been a big fan of you for a while, both of you. So I'm just really excited to be in
We
your orbit.
fangirl
This
over
is
you as well. So, yeah, super excited to have you
Same.
join us today too.
yeah,
Yeah,
thank
and
you
we'll
so
have to, Nicole, I didn't tell you this before we talked, but Emily and I were going back and forth on Threads or wherever we like randomly talk to each other on the internet about we need to get like a Wisconsin women organizers
Yeah.
group chat going.
Absolutely.
Agreed.
Agreed.
Yeah. I love
That's
that.
where the magic happens,
Yes.
the group chat. But we do need to get out of the group chat every now and then and go have a piece of pizza with the county Dems. All right, those are my takeaways.
Yes.
Okay, well, thank you so much for joining us. It was awesome to talk to you.
Yeah. Thanks so much. We'll see
Bye.
you down the road.
Take care.